Fiona Turner is such a useless dumbass. Next month, we're getting rid of her. Mark my words, she has no idea what's coming. The voice in the video was unmistakable. Gregory Hale, my boss, the man I had worked under for 20 years at Hale and Morrison Strategic Consulting. I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone as if the screen had just cracked open my entire life. The video was only 30 seconds long, but it felt endless. Gregory stood in the middle of the company's annual rooftop party in downtown Chicago. One hand wrapped around a glass of bourbon, his face red from alcohol and arrogance. Around him stood people I had trained, defended, covered for, and helped succeed. Some laughed, some looked away. No one said a word for me. The video had been sent by Ethan Cole, a young analyst I had mentored since his first nervous day at the firm. His message was short. "Fiona, I thought you should see this before Monday." I replayed the clip again. "She thinks she's irreplaceable," Gregory continued, smirking. "By next month, we'll have a younger face in her chair, and she won't even see it coming." My throat tightened. If you're curious how a man who once called me useless ended up begging me to save the company he thought he controlled, then hit the like button before we continue. I'd also love to know where you're listening from, and how old you are. There is a truth that I had given 20 years of my life to this company. Late nights, missed family dinners, weekends spent saving reports Gregory barely understood. I had protected his reputation more times than I could count, and this was what I was to him. A joke. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake in the dark, feeling humiliation burn slowly into something colder. By sunrise, the hurt was still there, but beneath it, something sharper had awakened. Determination. Just a small note, this story is a work of fiction, created with the help of AI to make it more powerful, emotional, and meaningful. But I believe what truly matters is not whether every detail is real, it's the lesson hidden inside it. Now, let's continue. At 7:52 on Monday morning, I pushed through the glass doors of Hale and Morrison Strategic Consulting with the same quiet rhythm I had followed for 2 decades. The lobby smelled faintly of polished marble and fresh coffee. The receptionist smiled at me. I smiled back. Nothing in my face gave away the fact that I had spent the entire night staring at my ceiling, replaying Gregory Hale's voice until it carved itself into my memory. The office was already alive. Phones rang, printers hummed, assistants hurried between conference rooms with folders pressed to their chests. Everything looked normal, which almost made it worse. A place could betray you and still look exactly the same the next morning. Gregory's office door was open. He was leaning against his desk, laughing with Victor Sloan, the firm's finance director, as if he had not humiliated me in front of half the company 2 nights earlier. His silver tie was loose, his expensive watch flashing under the lights. When he saw me, his smile paused for half a second. Just half a second. Then the mask returned. "Morning, Fiona," he said brightly. Ready for another busy week, I placed my bag beside my desk and looked at him with the calmest smile I had ever worn. Always. "Gregory, you know me." His grin widened. He thought he did know me. That was his first mistake. "Good," he said. "We'll need your steady hands this month." I almost laughed. Instead, I nodded. "Then I'll make sure everything runs smoothly." He turned back to Victor, already dismissing me from his mind. To him, I was still the loyal employee who would work late, fix his mistakes, and walk blindly into whatever trap he had planned. But something had changed. I opened my laptop. I answered emails. I joined meetings. I approved reports and corrected numbers no one else had noticed. From the outside, I was Fiona Turner, dependable as ever. Inside, I had already stopped working for Gregory Hale. I was studying him. Every careless word, every weak spot, every door he had left unlocked. He thought I didn't see it coming. Now I was going to make sure he never saw me coming, for the next 4 weeks. I became exactly what Gregory expected me to be. I arrived before most of the staff. I stayed after the conference room lights went dark. I smiled through strategy meetings, solved problems before they became visible, and handed Gregory polished reports that made him look brilliant in front of clients who had stopped trusting his judgment. Every morning, he walked past my desk with that satisfied little nod, as if he were admiring a machine that still worked perfectly right before sending it to scrap. "Excellent work, Fiona," he would say. "Thank you, Gregory," I would answer. Then I would return to my screen and save another piece of the truth. Old emails, renewal schedules, client complaints Gregory had ignored, financial summaries Victor Sloan had buried, contract clauses that proved which relationships were tied to me personally. Not to Hale and Morrison. I did not steal anything. I did not break a single rule. I simply made sure I had copies of what I was allowed to access while I was still holding half that firm together. At lunch, I made quiet phone calls from my car. First, to Margaret Ellis, a corporate attorney I trusted more than anyone in the business. I told her enough to make her silent for several seconds. "Fiona," she finally said, "if he thinks he can humiliate you and then push you out quietly, he has made a very expensive mistake." Second, I contacted old clients, not with accusations, not with drama, just careful conversations, a few thoughtful questions, a hint that my future might soon change. Their responses told me everything. "If you move, Fiona, call me first. We work with you, not Gregory. Wherever you land, we'll listen." And finally, I called Meridian Ridge Advisory, the rival firm Gregory pretended not to fear. Their CEO, Adrian Vale, returned my message within an hour. By then, I knew this was no longer about surviving. It was about leaving with the power he never realized I had. On the final Friday of that month, I came in earlier than usual. The city was still waking up beyond the tall windows. Pale morning light spreading across the desks and glass walls of Hale and Morrison. I placed my bag beside my chair, turned on my computer, and opened the same project dashboard I had managed every morning for years. Nothing about my hands trembled. Nothing about my breathing changed. Gregory, however, looked restless. He walked past my desk twice before 10, both times pretending to check on something near the printer. At 11:30, I saw Celeste Grant from Human Resources enter his office with a thin navy folder tucked against her chest. She closed the door behind her. I already knew. Still, I finished my client update, corrected 3 errors in a financial memo, and sent a polite reminder to Victor about a report he had forgotten again. At exactly 2:15 p.m., my phone lit up. "Fiona, please come to my office when you have a moment." I read the message once, then stood slowly, smoothing the front of my blouse. Around me, the office seemed to hold its breath. A few people glanced up and quickly looked away. I knocked on Gregory's open door. "Come in," he said, using the soft voice menus when they want cruelty to sound professional. Celeste sat to his right, her folder placed neatly on the table. Gregory gestured toward the chair across from him. "Fiona, please sit." I did. He folded his hands, wearing an expression of practiced regret. "First, I want to say how much we appreciate everything you've contributed over the years." I nodded once. "As you know," he continued, "the consulting landscape is changing. We've had to review several senior roles, and after careful consideration, we've decided to restructure your position." There it was. "My position is being eliminated?" I asked calmly. Gregory blinked. "Yes. Unfortunately. Effective immediately." He hesitated. "At the end of today." I looked from him to Celeste, then back again. "And this decision is final." The question seemed to unsettle him. He shifted in his chair, searching my face for panic, anger, tears, anything he could use to feel powerful. But I gave him nothing. "Yes," he said slowly. "It's final." I smiled faintly. Perfect. Then I'll make sure my transition is clean. If you agree with how I handled the situation, no arguing, no begging, and not letting Gregory realize how well I knew everything, then please hit the like button to show your support. I stepped out of Gregory's office with the Navy folder in my hand and the quiet smile still resting on my face. Behind me, I could almost feel his confusion pressing through the glass walls. He had expected me to break, to ask why, to plead for more time or accuse him of what I knew. Instead, I had given him exactly what he wanted. Silence. At my desk. I began packing slowly. A framed photo went into the box first. Then my notebook, my favorite pen, a small ceramic mug Ethan had given me after his first successful client presentation. People passed by with awkward expressions, offering soft apologies they did not really know how to finish. I'm so sorry. Fiona, you'll be okay, right? This place won't be the same. I thanked each of them politely. I did not mention the video. I did not mention Gregory's laughter. I did not mention the month I had spent preparing for this exact moment, because the most important thing I had left to do required calm hands. At 4:41 p.m., I sat down one last time and opened my company email. My access would be cut soon. Gregory had probably assumed I would spend these final minutes crying in the restroom or carrying a cardboard box to the elevator. Instead, I wrote to Malcolm Reed, CEO of Northbridge Capital, Hale and Morrison's largest client and the source of nearly 40% of the firm's annual revenue. Subject: Thank you, Malcolm. I wanted to personally thank you for your trust and partnership over the years. As of today, I will be departing Hale and Morrison Strategic Consulting. I have valued every project we built together, and if there is ever an opportunity to continue supporting your team in an independent consulting capacity, I would be glad to speak. Warm regards, Fiona Turner. I read the message twice. Nothing emotional, nothing bitter, nothing illegal, just the truth. Then I clicked send. A few seconds later, the email disappeared into the system, quiet and harmless looking. Gregory had no idea that one polite message had just pulled the first stone from the foundation beneath his empire. The next morning, I woke to the vibration of my phone against the nightstand. Once, then again, then again. I opened my eyes to a gray Saturday morning and watched the screen light up with an unknown number. I did not answer. A minute later, another call came through. Then a message from Ethan. Fiona, whatever you did, the office is exploding. Malcolm Reed just suspended Northbridge's renewal. Gregory is losing his mind. I sat up slowly, reading the words twice, so it had begun sooner than I expected. Northbridge Capital had been with Hale and Morrison for 9 years. They were not loyal to Gregory. They were not loyal to the logo on the lobby wall. They were loyal to results, stability, and the person who had answered their emergency calls at midnight when Gregory was too busy taking credit at industry dinners. By noon, I had 5 missed calls from Hale and Morrison. At 2:07 p.m., Gregory called from his personal number. This time, I answered. Fiona, he said, his voice tight but trying to sound casual. I heard Malcolm reached out to you. He did, I replied. A pause. I think there may have been some confusion about your departure, Gregory said. Northbridge seems to believe this creates a serious continuity issue. It does, I said calmly. His breathing changed. Look, he continued, forcing a laugh. This has gotten unnecessarily dramatic. I'd appreciate it if you could speak with Malcolm and reassure him that Hale and Morrison remains fully capable. I looked out my window at the quiet street below. Gregory, I said softly, you stood at a company party and called me a useless dumbass. You told them I wouldn't see my own firing coming. Why would your largest client need reassurance from someone like me? Silence. Then, that was just office banter. Fiona, you know how people talk after a few drinks. No, I said. I know how people reveal themselves after a few drinks. He had no answer for that. For the first time in 20 years, Gregory Hale needed me, and I owed him absolutely nothing. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, I was sitting in the lobby of Meridian Ridge Advisory, watching sunlight slide across the marble floor. The building felt different from Hale and Morrison. Quieter, sharper, less desperate to impress. The receptionist already knew my name, which told me Adrian Vale had been expecting this meeting long before Gregory ever understood he had created it. "Ms. Turner," she said, standing with a professional smile. "Mr. Vale is ready for you." 5 minutes later, I sat across from Adrian in a corner office overlooking the river. He was younger than Gregory, but his eyes had the calm focus of someone who listened before speaking. On his desk sat the file I had sent him earlier that week, unopened but clearly studied. "I'll be direct," Adrian said. "The moment I heard Hale and Morrison was letting you go, I thought Gregory Hale had lost his mind." I gave him a small smile. "That seems to be a popular opinion today." He leaned back. "Northbridge suspending their renewal confirms what I already suspected. Those clients were never attached to Gregory. They were attached to you." I did not deny it. Instead, I opened the leather folder I had brought and placed several pages in front of him. "These are not confidential documents. They're my own projections, based on public timelines, client behavior, and 20 years of experience managing those accounts." Adrian picked up the first page. His expression changed as he read. "You know exactly when their renewals are due," he said. "I know when they get nervous. I know what Gregory promised and failed to deliver. I know which clients feel ignored, which ones are overpaying, and which ones are already looking for a reason to leave." He looked up at me. "And you're offering Meridian Ridge a way in." "No," I said calmly. "I'm offering Meridian Ridge a way to win." A slow smile crossed his face. "Then let's discuss your terms." For the first time in weeks, I felt the ground beneath me become solid again. Gregory had thrown away what he thought was dead weight. Adrian saw it for what it was. Leverage. By Monday morning, Hale and Morrison was no longer pretending everything was fine. The first message from Ethan arrived at 8:12. "Fiona, you need to know this. 3 more clients just sent termination notices. People are running between offices. Victor looks like he hasn't breathed in an hour." I read it from my new desk at Meridian Ridge, a fresh cup of coffee warming my hands. My nameplate had not even arrived yet, but the calls had already started. Adrian's team moved quickly, professionally, and without panic. That alone would have frightened Gregory more than any threat. At Hale and Morrison, panic was spreading like smoke. By 9, Victor Sloan had locked himself inside the finance office with 2 analysts and a stack of revenue projections that no longer made sense. The numbers Gregory had bragged about for years were collapsing line by line. Legal was digging through contracts, hunting desperately for clauses that might force clients to stay. But good clients do not remain because of fine print. They remain because they trust the people behind the work. And Gregory had removed the person they trusted. At 10:30, Ethan sent another message. "Gregory is calling everyone. He keeps saying this is temporary. Nobody believes him." I could picture it perfectly. Gregory pacing behind his glass walls. Tie loosened. Voice rising with every unanswered call. He would promise stability. He would promise continuity. He would promise that Hale and Morrison had a plan. But clients had already heard enough promises. By noon, industry whispers had begun spreading. Northbridge was reconsidering. Ellison Group was reviewing alternatives. Porter and Vance had requested transition documents. 3 accounts I had managed personally were now speaking with Meridian Ridge. Gregory called me again that afternoon. I let it ring twice before answering. "What did you do?" he demanded. I looked around my new office, calm and quiet. "I left," I said. "That's all." But we both knew the truth. I had not just left Hale and Morrison. I had taken their confidence with me. By the end of that week, the collapse was no longer happening quietly behind conference room doors. It was public. Business sites began circling the story before Hale and Morrison could shape it. The first headline appeared Friday morning, while I was reviewing a client proposal at Meridian Ridge. Major client exodus hits hail, and Morrison Strategic Consulting an hour later. Another followed. Investors question Gregory Hale's leadership after sudden account losses. Then another. Meridian Ridge gains key accounts amid rivals' internal turmoil. I stared at the screen, not with surprise, but with a strange stillness. For 20 years, Gregory had built his reputation on work he barely understood and relationships he never bothered to maintain. Now, with one careless decision, the truth had become visible to everyone. At 11:18, Ethan texted me again. Emergency board meeting. They pulled Gregory, Victor, and legal upstairs. People are saying investors want him out. I set my phone down and looked across the office at Adrian, who was speaking calmly with Northbridge's transition team. No shouting, no panic, just competence. That was what Gregory had never valued until he lost it. Later, I heard what happened inside that boardroom. Gregory walked in trying to perform confidence, the way he always did. He told them the situation was temporary. He said clients were emotional. He claimed Meridian Ridge had taken advantage of a misunderstanding. But this time, no one laughed with him. One board member reportedly slid a revenue report across the table and asked, "Do you understand what you did?" Gregory argued. Victor stayed silent. Legal had no miracle clause to save him. Then came the sentence that ended everything. You fired the person holding this firm together. By 3:40 p.m., the internal announcement went out. Effective immediately. Gregory Hale has stepped down as Chief Executive Officer of Hale and Morrison Strategic Consulting. I read it twice. The man who had called me useless in front of a laughing room had just been removed by his own company. And somehow, that felt quieter than revenge. It felt like justice. The Monday after Gregory's resignation, I walked into Meridian Ridge Advisory not as a wounded former employee, but as a senior partner. Adrian met me near the executive conference room with a firm handshake and a smile that held no pity, only respect. Ready to build something better, he asked, for the first time in years. I answered honestly, yes. The clients followed because they trusted me. My new team listened when I spoke. My name was no longer hidden behind Gregory's polished speeches or buried inside reports he presented as his own. Every meeting reminded me that I had not lost my place. I had simply outgrown the room where I had been standing. 2 weeks later, Gregory came to see me. He looked smaller without the title. His suit was still expensive, but it no longer carried power. He stood in my office doorway and said the words I never imagined hearing from him. I need work. Fiona, for a moment. I said nothing. Then I stood, walked toward him, and looked him directly in the eye. No, Gregory, what you need is humility. His face tightened, but he had no answer. I returned to my desk and let security show him out. That evening, I looked over the Chicago skyline and finally understood I was never worthless. I was the value he failed to recognize. Sometimes, life does not ask us to shout louder. It asks us to stand calmer, think wiser, and remember who we are when others try to reduce us to their careless words. This story reminds me that true value does not disappear just because someone refuses to see it. I learned 3 lessons. First, never let humiliation make you forget your worth. People may disrespect you, but they do not get to define you. Second, silence is not always weakness. Sometimes, staying calm gives you the power to make the smartest move. Third, loyalty should be given to people and places that respect it, not to those who only use it when they need you. For me, the most powerful lesson is that knowing your value can change your entire future. Which lesson impressed you the most? Share it in the comments. And if this story touched you, subscribe, like, and share it so someone else can find strength from it too.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories, a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.